I think burnout is usually a system failure that's masquerading as individual weakness. And to prevent it, we must teach leaders to build protective systems. So identifying and knowing that and taking a step back and identifying that from that perspective, that you could truly understand how can I actually set up boundaries and set up systems to avoid burnout. And I think it's important for us to go through some of those processes and actually identifying what that is so we can prevent burnout and redesign our systems and create it in a way where it's practical, where it's logical.
From battlefield scars to boardroom wins, Michael Allison doesn't just talk about resilience, he lives it. A Marine and Purple Heart recipient turned entrepreneur, Michael knows firsthand what it means to lead under fire. If you think scaling a venture is just about marketing strategy and spreadsheets, think again. In this episode of the Executive Connect podcast, we're diving into what it really takes to lead under pressure, bounce back from adversity, and build ventures that don't just scale, but scale with soul. Whether you're a founder in the trenches or an executive executing transformation, this is your blueprint for resilient growth. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Melissa, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Now, your journey is anything but typical. Marine, Purple Heart recipient, entrepreneur. Take us back to the battlefield experience that shaped your leadership strategies today.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I had a chance to serve our country in Iraq, in Fallujah. And, that experience is one of the most chaotic experiences I could ever say that I've been through in my life. Getting blown up by VBIED and losing friends on the battlefield, nobody wants that, right? But that's actually what truly happened. So when that VBIED hit, it reduced everything for me down to two questions. Like, what must be done now and who can do it? And through the noise, through the smell, all the improvised lighting, the chaos, all that class and stuff, that experience taught me to be brutally clear with what needs to be executed and what needs to be done. And under pressure, leadership is an operating system, not just like a personality trait. And I think when you translate that into business, then you got to create designing systems that are repeatable and that gives you clarity. And it helps create like a decision rhythm for you too as well, where roles are simplified, habits are simplified, and that removes some of the ambiguity when things are in that particular place. So once those things were in place for me, it gave me practical solutions to make decision, direction, and destination, just to make sure things are operated at a more precise level, especially when you're a leader and you're in the midst of chaos. There cannot be any ambiguity. There cannot be any confusions. Everybody needs to be decisive. Everybody needs to know what to do, especially when crap hits the fan.
Ready to lead smarter and invest wiser? On the Executive Connect podcast, we unpack executive strategies for wealth and influence. Hit the subscribe button now. Don't just watch, act. Literally, you survived a VBIED attack that could have taken your life and you've seen it. And so talk to me a little bit about that moment and how, I have to imagine it completely shifted and pivoted your life at that exact moment. How did it shift how you lead and work in the world today?
Most definitely. It allowed me to create that human connection with people. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to as leaders. We're working with human beings. And when I was in the battlefield, that's someone's life that actually something just happened to them. And how do you respond and how do you handle that? And when you take in consideration, you're working with people on a daily basis and they have natural things that is going to move them in different kind of ways, you got to get a chance to know your people. And for me, I had a chance to know everybody that I served with in combat. And it showed me how they reacted whenever either the seriousness of things to the less seriousness of things and how they responded. And I took that same approach in the corporate space, in the business space too, as well, of how to treat people and create that human connection. And once you get that empathy built into you, you understand like, well, this employee reacts this way or this employee reacts this way. Not every single employee is actually treated the same, quite honestly, just like how it is when I was playing sports or just like how it is when I was actually serving too as well. But it allowed me also to, in addition to that, was to be intentional and not take opportunities for granted. You never know what opportunities you're going to get again. And I think it's important for leaders to be intentional, say what we mean what we say, especially when we're working with our teams, working with our clients, working with people that are reporting to us on down the line.
I love that you said that. I think there's so much truth in that. And one of my personal, missions, statements I live by is carpe diem, which means seize the day. Because
Exactly.
you just said it. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or if that's ever going to be come back around in your life. So talk to me a little bit about in the world we live in today, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of disruptors, whether it's in the company, whether it's traveling, it's everywhere. How do you build and bring that battlefield calm into the boardroom, into, any situation in your life?
For me, I think when it comes to dealing with chaos, and you have to be centered, you have to be grounded and really know who you are as a leader. And whatever it may be for yourself, for you to anchor yourself, it could be in your faith, it could be in your mental health, it could be in your physical fitness. And those are some things that you truly, truly, really need to know who you are. And when you have those things anchored to yourself, then you can know how to respond to things because you won't get out of character. And oftentimes, many people would get out of character when they don't know how to respond. They don't have repeatable systems. They do not have things in place. And then they start doing sporadic things. So for me, I follow the 3 steps decision. What are the decisions that I need to make? And then operate through that with clarity and precision. And then what are the next steps that I need to take in regards to the direction or approach that I need to follow through? And then follow that through the mental checklist that I do have for myself. And then make sure that it identifies with what I'm aligned to, what am I anchored to, and then it allow you to make the better decisions, whether this is a yes or whether this is a no.
Now, talk to me a little bit about identity driven leadership. And I know you talk a lot about identity aligned leadership. What does that mean in practice for founders, executives, leaders that are trying to scale or build something quick?
I think identity driven leadership is simple. It's who you are, determine, and how you decide. Founders often chase like features or the markets or growth metrics while their teams ask, who are we supposed to be? Right. So without a coherent identity, every decision becomes opinion based or hiring is inconsistent. And I think culture sometimes become fragmented as you try to scale. So I think for founders, identity is the compass, right? When pressure arrives, identity answers the question, which choice matches who we are? And that short circuit debate reduces friction and speeds execution for me. Practically, I think we help teams articulate a small set of identity anchors where we value and express as non-negotiable behaviors for me as well too.
And that's really interesting because I feel like we're at a time, now correct me if I'm wrong here by saying this, where people are either trying to rediscover who they are, discover who they are, reinvent themselves. So, talk to me about how you help people discover, rediscover their leadership identity right now.
I follow this 3 step process. And it's interesting you say that right around this time of the year, many people is going to get ready to end off the year. And now they're getting ready to go into the new year and they're going to have New Year's resolutions and all of these different things. And somehow they forgot who they are. And now they're trying to refocus and recenter. And identity drivenness comes from 3 things that I'm going to always ask people to do. And it's tied under the decision framework is number 1 is identify who you are, and then identify who do you really want to be. And then sometimes we get into this mindset of what people have put up on us opposed to who we truly want to be. And I say that as in, you may have a friend that say, hey, you should be this, you should do that. Or your mom and dad tell you that, hey, you should do this, you should do that. And we actually go that route. And when we get to our deathbed, we have these regrets and saying like, why did I even do this? I didn't really want to do this. And we find ourselves burning out and crashing out because we did things that we didn't really want to do. The next step to that is clarifying. And how can we clarify what is it that is truly, truly what we value, what are our standards and what it is to our core? And the last piece to that is going to be verifying it, actually identifying, is this something that I truly want to find myself going down this path, going down this road? If you can follow those 3 steps, I think it simplifies things for you.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's so much in that. Oftentimes I hear from leaders, they have to become kind of who their leadership wants them to be, whether it's, a woman in a male dominated space, whether it's an engineer that has to become a leader because they were engineering something and now they're leading something. I feel like let's unpack a little bit about what
Yeah.
happens when companies let leaders drift too far away from their actual identity or whatever they're really good at in their roles.
I think it's important when things like that happen to identify what are your boundaries. And if we don't have any boundaries, then we get out of limit and we get out of character. So that's the number one thing I would say. Number two thing is this: be disciplined. Oftentimes when these things come at us, we're not disciplined in regard to like standing up for ourselves or speaking up or being bold and actually truly going with what's at our gut and what's at our core, opposed to just going with it what everybody says. And when you could do those two things, I think that'll help simplify things for you.
Yeah, well said. I think when we get clear about what we're trying to accomplish as a team, it makes everybody I feel like clarity is kind. And the more we're clear with not with just the vision of the company, but clarity with who we are and what we're driving towards, it helps the whole mission align. And I love how the military does that so well. It's really, they're a leadership organization.
Most definitely.
One person is not in the role. They're not there. Somebody steps in and knows how to perform at a certain level because they've trained, they've practiced, they have clarity and understanding of what they need to do. I want to switch gears a little bit on you. I love, love, love this word resilience. It's my new kind of favorite word. And so when I think of scaling businesses in any capacity, whether scaling staff or revenue or whatever a founder, entrepreneur, or leader is trying to do right now, scaling usually means more stress, faster pace, higher stakes, more burnout. So, talk to me a little bit about how leaders avoid the burnout before it's too late while they're building something great. This episode is brought to you by Summit Ventures. If you're an accredited investor, Summit gives you access to one of the greatest tax advantage opportunities: direct ownership in oil and gas. Their projects deliver what they call the triple play: cash flow, equity growth, and powerful tax benefits. And here's the best part: these investments qualify for 1031 exchanges. That means you can roll gains from real estate into energy while deferring capital gains. To learn more and get a free white paper, Oil and Gas Demystified, just visit www.summitven.com/executive connect.
I think burnout is usually a system failure that's masquerading as individual weakness. And to prevent it, we must teach leaders to build protective systems. And when we're building protective systems, it's truly creating like walls and creating those boundaries. And you'll really know like you just mentioned, the military truly gives us like repeatable systems that we process over and over again. That's why you can see someone could come through the military, go through the ranks, serve for 20 years, and somebody else could come in and do the same thing over and over again hence what reason why the military system has been created for over hundreds of years now. So identifying and knowing that and taking a step back and identifying that from that perspective, then you could truly understand how can I actually set up boundaries and set up systems to avoid burnout. And I think it's important for us to go through some of those processes and actually identifying what that is so we can prevent burnout and redesign our systems and create it in a way where it's practical, where it's logical, whereas we need to either look at like 90-day sprints, audit what we're doing, look at some of our calendars, look at some of our micro practices, and then put some of those things in place and actually train and reiterate, train and iterate, put these things into practice, and then actually go from there and make sure we could identify what it actually looks like. You could even implement some coaching that's tied into that too as well, from somebody else to look at it from a different standpoint to see what are some of our blind spots, what are some of our weak areas in that particular space, if you have quite a few people that actually is suffering from burnout too as well.
I love it. Now, talk to me a little bit about break the bottle and protect the house. How does this framework keep leaders grounded in the storm?
Break the Bottle initially came from a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine. And quite often I was one that was bottling so many emotions mentally, physically, spiritually, and things that I was keeping on the inside. And I really did not know how to respond from that. And it stemmed from my childhood, and it affected me as a professional too, as well. And I could not speak up in meetings, or I would hesitate when it came time to either make a phone call for a business deal, or when I was inside of a room, I maybe have been intimidated. And when we started going back at it and looking at it, why is it that I won't speak up, or why is it that I get complacent, or why is it that I do some of these things, or I procrastinate? And it stemmed from that. So once we decided to identify what those things are, we came up with the concept of breaking the bottle. But once I did that, I followed the framework that I mentioned earlier of like, what are the decisions that I need to start making, identifying what it is, clarify what it is, and verify what it is. Then step two to that was, how could we actually go in a direction that's going to get us to that path of breaking the bottle? So then we had to start building, and then we had to start planning and navigating through that. Yes, there's going to be hiccups along the way, but once you have a system in place, you could actually truly navigate through that. And then the last part to that was the destination piece when we were talking about that. And how could we actually start aligning ourselves with the people that surround us, and how we could start engaging that? And then how could we sustain that? Because yes, you're going to have success doing that, but the key to that is not get complacent. And then protect the house is, you want to think of yourself, you want to think about your house, of all of these things that you actually put in place to protect your own house, and all of the safeguard things that you're doing. So just if you want to think about it, your house has doors, it has windows, it has security systems, all of these things that we have in place, right? And you will not let or allow anything to come inside of that and take that away. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about protecting the house. So what we do, we create house rules, we create the four walls that's tied around purpose, people, your process, and your practices to actually implement some of these things in place.
I want to this popped into my head while you're talking. I
Yeah.
find a lot of times that leaders make some mistakes as stress ramps up.
Yeah.
They might have stress at work, stress at home, stress with the politics, whatever's going on in their life. So talk to me about some of the mistakes that leaders make when stress happens and it ramps up in their life.
Yeah, sadly, whenever stress hits us, we default to what is going to be our quick wins or our quick fixes. And sometimes it could be to our own demise. Personally, for me, whenever I was stressed out, I may have go get a drink, or I may just want to sleep it off, or not even worry about it. And oftentimes, even when you're stressed, when you're burned out, those problems are still there tomorrow. So it's important for us to address it head on and actually deal with it. That's my simple answer to that. And we can't avoid stress. We can't avoid burnout. We do have to deal with it. But once you start doing that, though, it's important for actually just follow through that process and create that system. So for me, I changed my diet. I changed how I was exercising. I changed the conversations of who I was speaking to. I changed what I was watching on TV. I changed the music and the podcast that I was listening to. And that all of a sudden just started changing my mood. That started changing my behavior. That changed how I woke up and changed how I went to bed at night, and started implementing those things. It changed me to become a better founder and a CEO for our company.
And I love that. I think there's so much truth in that. Getting the stress out of our body and into something else, like whether it's breaking the bottle or punching a punching bag or sweating it out at the gym or getting a massage. But the key is to not let it like build and compound, because like you said, it's easy to grab a drink or bad food or,
You'll
stay up
explode.
late. Yeah, it's so easy, right?
Yeah,
And
you'll
so
explode.
yeah, over time, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. So let's talk about another one of your framework called leadership reentry. What is this about, and how does it apply to companies that are trying to scale their business?
Yeah, so leadership reentry is a set of checkpoints for leaders who are moving into new stakes, right? So a promotion, a new market, or a scale inflection type of thing. So growth stretches purpose and people, correct? So what we do is when we do re-entry, we recalibrate both. And that checklist is very short. And I mentioned this earlier before, but it ties into the Protect the House framework too as well. But purpose, like we reaffirm why the organization exists and what winning actually truly looks like. Then the people part of that is that we're going to reassess the roles, the capacity, and who must be stretched. And then the third part to that is the process. Let's map out some of the decision handoffs and execution rhythm. And then the practice part of that is like we're going to start rehearsing the highest risk moment with some simulations that's tied into that to actually really truly embed that into the DNA. And I think when we do that, that's one of the most key important things for us to actually start implementing. We do that through a 30-day plan, a 60-day plan, and a 90-day plan that has measurable outcomes.
I love that. Now, you kind of alluded to it a little bit as we come into, the new year, everybody's thinking about, the things that they want to change in their life. So talk to me a little bit about this hitting pause in certain areas of their life and then recalibrating. Like, how does one do that in practice?
For me, whenever I wanted to pause and reset at the end of the year, I'm going to share with you, this is in my new book too, but this is what me and my wife do. We actually take the entire weekend and we travel to a location and we rent out, let's say, the hotel, like like a little breakout conference room type of thing. And we actually just take our time back. We go over there with a glass of a champagne, probably have some charcuterie board, and we actually just take our time back and look at the year of what we did in regards to like what we planned, our goals that's tied to our business, that's tied to our health, our fitness, tied to our kids, our investing, all of those things are all those things. And then once we go through that, now we look at the next year and how we could plan for that. But it's in one of the most relaxed moments of our time, but we disconnect from the phone calls, we disconnect from the TV, we disconnect from the news, and we just get away and we just enjoy ourselves and we just actually plan and strategize and just actually recoup ourselves just to get ready to come back and attack the next year. And that's something that I would recommend to all leaders out there. Just take some time away, take some time back and just disconnect. If you need to go to the Bahamas, if you need to go to Jamaica, not Jamaica right now, there's a hurricane, but travel somewhere and just take some time to yourself and just really like re-engage back with yourself, get a chance to like know yourself and have a conversation with either a loved one or a family member that's close with you as you get a chance to just take some time to yourself.
Now, that hurricane, for the record, is Hurricane Melissa. I
That's
don't
right.
know if you heard. I don't know if you heard. I'm coming through. It's a record-breaking hurricane. So, my brother's been giving me a hard time about this. You launched the book, biggest hurricane ever. We're just doing it here at the Executive Connect experience today. One thing that you mentioned that I know I'm personally guilty of is, I set a goal, I achieve the goal, and I move on. What I'm hearing you say is you sit with your wife and you celebrate all that you've accomplished, and
Yes.
then you recalibrate and look towards the future. Now, that's an area I am working on right now, is recalibrating how to celebrate my successes. And not that this is a podcast about me, but I find it funny. My co-author for my book messaged me the night before we got Amazon, or the day we got Amazon bestseller. And my reply to her was, "What does that mean?" I did say to her, "That's so cool." I'm like, "What does that mean?" But there's so much truth in what you're saying, is celebrate
the wins.
all that we win. And they could be small wins, like getting our kids into a college, or, cleaning out our garage, our dreaded garage, or spring cleaning, or whatever it is you've been trying to do. I know I have tons of drawers I've been trying to clean for years, and that's still on my list of celebration. But I think you're so spot on with that. I think it's really an important piece. So let's talk about adversity. You say adversity isn't just something to survive, it's something to use. Amen. I couldn't agree with that more. So let's unpack it and talk about how entrepreneurs can use hardship to scale smarter.
So, adversity gives you honest feedback faster than success does. And I had to give that thought when I was looking at all the different adversities that I've been through in my life. And to be quite honest with you, Melissa, I've been through a lot. And I've been through several hurricanes growing up as a kid. I've been abused as a kid. I've been through injuries playing sports. I've been through all of the things you could think about that someone goes through in war, either being shot at or being blown up, you name it. Even my transition out of the military was not the greatest. I've been through losing a job. I've been through 2 divorces. I've been through all of these different things. And it allows you to learn from all of these experiences opposed to sitting here and stressing about it or worrying about it. And what I've learned from that, it has allowed me to become stronger and much more resilient whenever other adversities have come my way, because I'm much more prepared to deal with tough situations and tough times. It's a known fact that tough situations is continuously going to go. You're not going to go a whole year, even 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years where everything is just going to be great. So how do you deal with those things? And it exposes the bottlenecks. It gives you clarity. It helps you with priorities. It forces creative constraints, right? So we've seen that teams use downturns to harden decision processes, eliminate brittle product lines, and sometimes codify better handoffs. And I see that whenever like companies are dealing with tough times and tough situations, and they either ask us to come in and help, and we actually go through processes, we go through training with them, and actually see what some of the tough things that they've dealt with before. Because sometimes you'll find that even like with leaders or with some of their staff, if they've never been through some things, they get into the micromanage space. They get into the indecisiveness of things because they don't really know how to deal with tough circumstances, tough situations in their business or even for themselves personally.
This episode's sponsor is a couple I absolutely love, David and Alexis Kiwi. They help power couples be successful at home just like they are at work. If you're crushing it in the business world but quietly disconnected from your spouse, you're not alone. Check them out at davidandalexis.kiwi.org. They have spent years creating a simple tool set that will help you save your marriage. Don't forget to use code EXECUTIVE1 to save $500 off their 6-week coaching program. davidandalexis.kiwi.org, code EXECUTIVE1. I love that. I always feel I like to reframe the storm as struggle, like struggle. Every time I've struggled in an area, I've used that struggle as fuel for strength. And I've refound different pieces and uncovered rocks within me that I never knew were there. And I find it funny if we keep making the same mistakes, Michael. It's funny how, whatever you believe in, God, the universe, they just keep serving us up the same things until we finally have that like aha moment, and then we make the change. So I find it's best to learn from our mistakes the first time. I've had to make them 1 or 2 times to really learn. So now I'm experts in some of those areas because I've made so many mistakes. But, it's so true.
I agree with you. I think the practical move is to treat each adversity as an experiment. Collect the data, formalize it into a playbook for yourself, right? And then bake that into like your rhythms as you go through tomorrow. And then just really look at that in regards to becoming an advantage for you or repeatable advantage for you too as well.
Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects these days, culture. Everybody has the master solution. I've heard things like pizza party solves everything or work from home, right? And so how do teams stay aligned during struggle, during stress, as they scale? Like, what is that formula to make teams stay together when things are tough?
Well, I believe culture is operational, not aspirational. And we help companies translate mission into like rituals. So onboarding scripts, 5-day rituals for new managers, weekly leader reviews, pre-mortem before launch and stuff like that, or public commitment, like a legacy leadership manifesto, those types of things. And when you kind of embed those things into your staff, it bleeds through in the DNA of your company. So if you ever notice what Chick-fil-A is, if you go inside of there, all of their employees respond the same, act the same, or treat them the same because they've created a culture. If you ever been to the Google building, they all kind of either dress the same, look the same, speak the same, right? If you ever been around the Amazon, they call themselves the Amazonians, and you'll see that they act a little bit different, treat each other a little bit different too as well. But what I love about them also, within their culture, they have standards, they have values, they have mottos, they have mantras. and you can kind of see that they live a certain way, act a certain way, and go about a certain way. So for you as an organization, what is the culture that you're creating or you're designing, right? And that could be inside of the DNA and into the fabric of what you have for yourself as a leader. And it's important for you as a leader to identify what those things are, because now you create a sense of belonging. You create a sense of where people say, I want to be there. I want to work there. I love my boss. I love my supervisor. And I think that's one of the most important things for leaders to actually acknowledge and actually start creating too as well. I think about also, when we served in the Marine Corps, we're a band of brothers. All of us wore the same uniform. All of us had each other's six because we believed in the mission. We believed in the vision of what the Marine Corps stand for.
I've seen and read so many company mission statements, like a lot of them, that they say people first, yet they're not people first, or they're all about technology and their employees are using very old technology. So let's talk about, how do you use identity as a filtering when hiring, onboarding, and in leadership development for companies?
I think identity is important for you as a leader and creating that for companies. So you as a leader, do you embody what you say? How do we measure that, right? So as a leader, your staff and your team is looking at you. Believe it or not, they're watching how you move. They're watching how you operate. So is that something that you actually practice what you preach? And when you do that, you got to create ways where you're held accountable just as much as you're holding other people accountable too as well.
I agree. I think I love that. I'm thinking as you're talking, I'll never forget this. I had a boss that was adamant that everybody arrived on time, yet he was never on time, right? So we all laughed, some of us were like 1 or 2 minutes late and we were like yelled at, and we just laughed and let it go. So none of us trusted him, right? None of us trusted him. Exactly. We all thought he was hypocritical.
Yeah.
And to your point, we weren't a team. It was a division. It was like, us against the person in charge versus all of us working together. So you're spot on.
Yeah, okay, you'll lose trust immediately if you're gonna say something and not do it yourself. You'll lose trust and credibility immediately, and it's hard to actually build that back up after a while. Then you're in a position of more so of apologizing, and this is where you often find that we're speaking about culture early, and this is where you'll often find where employees or staff disconnect, and now they're looking for the exit of the door and trying to find somewhere else to go.
100%. If you had to distill your entire leadership philosophy into 3 words, you've picked clarity, creativity, and conviction. First of all, I love all 3 words, and they're all starting with C's. So talk to me about why the C words and why those 3.
Because they're sequential and mutually reinforcing. I think clarity gives you the right questions to answer. I think creativity gives you the option to answer it with constraints when constraints tighten. I think conviction gives you the courage to act and the consistency to keep doing it. You need all 3 for me, I believe. I think clarity without creativity is kind of brittle, and then creativity without conviction is just noise. And I think conviction without clarity is just stubbornness. I think when you have clarity, you could perform much more precisely with precision. And when you have creativity, you get the opportunity to now actually freely think and actually truly be yourself, and not subconsciously or wonder and start thinking about anything else. And then the conviction is actually you're going to do what you say what you're going to mean what you say, and actually perform and execute, and you're not second guessing.
Now, tough question. What one of the 3 do you think leaders struggle with the most today?
Wow.
Only one.
The one I say leaders struggle with the most is conviction. And they struggle with that the most because I found that a lot of leaders are indecisive and they struggle with making decisions. That's why I'm always big on decision. And you're one decision away. And people are scared of failure. People don't want to fail. So they get indecisive and they second guess themselves. Should I do this? Should I do that? And you'll find that the people that are very decisive, people that make decisions very fast, very quickly, are the ones that are more successful.
I love it. I'm one of those quick decision people, Michael. I decided to start the podcast and I called my best friend and my co-author to be my first guest. And I'm like, well, hopefully your parents and my parents will listen. And here I am, hundreds of episodes later, still talking to fabulous people like you. Awesome. In closing, I want to get any final thoughts or anything you want to leave with our listeners today, and share with them what's the best way to communicate with you.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to communicate with me or contact me, you could definitely find me at www.michaelwallison.com, or you could find our company at Diversity Leadership Institute for all of our programs and our services. On social media, it's I am Michael W. Allison, simple all across the board. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on all of those platforms. What I would leave with your leaders here that are listening to the podcast, I think it's important for us to lead with that conviction, lead with that creativity, and lead with clarity. And when you lead from that way and lead well, the people that follow you, the people that you're leading and taking them to wherever that your organization is going, it'll be much more easier and simpler for you to do so when they believe in you and they trust you too as well.
Well said. Great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today and listening to me as I get tongue-tied and talking about bad jokes like Hurricane Melissa. Appreciate you spending your time with us today, sharing your knowledge with our listeners. That's the Executive Connect podcast.